My name is Jennifer Gray Thompson, and I am the CEO of After the Fire. Welcome to the podcast, How to Disaster: Recover, Rebuild, and Reimagine. In this podcast, we bring you the very best practices, best hearts, and great ideas from other disaster-affected communities. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the How to Disaster podcast, where we talk about how to recover, rebuild, and reimagine. My name is Jennifer Gray Thompson, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of After the Fire. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. I recently sat down with Woolsey Fire survivor Gary Jones. Gary and Jean lost their homes in the 2018 fire that raged through Los Angeles and Ventura counties on the same day as the Camp Fire in Paradise. And while many of us are aware of the Camp Fire level of devastation, a lot of people have sort of left behind the Woolsey Fire devastation. Or there's the assumption that everybody who lost their home in the Woolsey Fire was wealthy because it was located, there was a lot of damage in Malibu in particular. We want to highlight that there are actually a lot of people who needed quite a bit of services and help post-disaster in the Woolsey Fire as well. And many people showed up to help. Gary and his wife, Jean, lived on their land, about 30 acres, for over 35 years when the Woolsey Fire came through. And there had been many times when they had been told to evacuate because a wildfire was coming through. But as Gary will tell you, that day on November 8th was different. He didn't heed the warning, and he's going to talk about that. And he didn't evacuate when he was asked to, and he's going to recommend against his own actions at that time. It's a very harrowing story, and it's an important story. And it's also one about how do you rebuild if you are on the California FAIR plan. For those of you that are unfamiliar, and Gary will talk about this, the California FAIR plan is the insurance of last resort. And it's for people who live in areas where there is no other way that they can be insured. But if you have a mortgage, you do have to be insured. So they were covered under the California FAIR plan when the cap was at $1.5 million. Today it's at $3 million. So $1.5 million may sound like a lot of money, but if you live in a very high value area, it's actually probably almost enough to rebuild. And I know I can hear it from here. Like, we are looking at people who are trying to rebuild for $100,000 to $400,000 in other rural areas. But our constituency at After the Fire is all fire victims. And that would include Gary and his wife, Jean. Gary and his wife, Jean, are, normal, average, very wonderful human beings. And full disclosure, I am related to them. Gary is my second cousin on my mom's side, and I've known him my entire life, obviously, and I do love and adore him, and I think that will come through. He's quite a character. Now, note that the format of this is a little bit different because I did film this in Malibu, and so you will just see a little photo of me, and mostly it'll be Gary talking, but I think that's fine. So once again, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the podcast, How to Disaster, and our guest today, Gary Jones.
I'm faced with a couple of problems on my property up on top. My septic system was plugged, and then I had a soils guy come out, and he managed to find my septic system, so he poked a hole right through the top of my septic tank, and I had to take it out. But I got the thing back together for less than $15,000, which I thought was pretty cheap.
That's great.
Yeah. And, so in the case down here, what may happen is I've got a sewer right there. So my neighbor's going to bring it up past me. So I think I'm just going to hook this thing up to sewer. And that'll improve the value of the property.
Yeah. So, hook this one, but not your house up on
I can't do it.
It's very expensive.
Shit goes downhill. Well, a lot of people ask you, what's it feel like losing everything? And it's kind of liberating. Actually is.
I've heard that from other fire survivors. Yeah.
It's kind of a liberating feeling because it's gone. and you go through life and you accumulate things, and then your life changes and you decide not to use that thing. I had scuba gear. I don't scuba anymore. And so
I know it's coming.
it,
Last time I have a clip of you where you went, the thing about hobbies and fire and hobbies you don't do anymore, that takes care of that hobby.
Takes care of that, makes a decision for you.
Yeah.
That's one of my beliefs is all the big decisions in life are made for you. You don't have to make them. Starting with birth and ending with death.
Yeah. What about marriage? That's a decision. Yeah. Well,
No.
So you also had things that you really loved though that were sad. Like you had a Model T, you had
motorcycles,
yes,
fun toys, but actually, of all the things I miss the most is I saw myself as a custodian of some antiques. I had some antiques that were several hundred years old, and I had an American flag with 13 stars and 13 stripes made of hemp.
Wow.
And I can't get that back. So some of the things I wish I still had, but for the most part, it's just stuff.
Except for the dogs.
Yeah, the dogs.
Dogs, that's
the only
super
thing
sad
I really
one.
Stressed about.
Yeah.
Think about.
Yeah.
What could I have done different? And the thing is, during a fire like that, you're just reacting. It's like I say with these people, what did you take? You just grab something. You put the car. Not very many of them grabbed pictures, which I was surprised. I think they grabbed pictures. They grabbed, almost everybody grabbed their cell phone and their computer or their laptop and pillows, blankets, shoes. I
think it's a good argument for considering that, to think about just some of it ahead of time. And I think that's what the CAL FIRE chief was really clear about the other day was try to think about it in advance. What he said was, at some point every acre of California will burn, and maybe that was a little bit hyperbolic, but not really. And so there's nothing wrong with thinking in advance. Like, we don't have a lot of valuable things in our house, so pay looters, whatever, it's all from the garage sale site anyway. But I do have a couple pieces of art that were made for us by my husband's cousin, and just a few things that are sentimental. So every time I evacuate or get ready to evacuate, which has been several times now, I make sure that those are on my list. Okay. Well, that's a hard thing to think about.
One of the things that I had fortunately done 4 months before the fire was I took a photograph of every room in the house, everything I had. I took a picture of, and so I had that photograph to fill out that list of 500 items. I could say, oh yeah, this here and that. I had a picture. But what I would say to people is, I didn't take a picture of what's in the drawers.
Oh, okay, but just the fact that you took a picture of what's in every room of your house,
but
you can also videotape
cool stuff in it.
Yes. So to my mother, when I told you recently, please go around and videotape your house, including the drawers, and she was like, why would I do the drawers? Like, you've got stuff in your drawers, you don't think about what's in there.
Watches. I had about $5,000 worth of watches in one of the drawers. And so anyways, I wish I'd have taken, what was in that drawer?
Contents lists are brutal. I actually had somebody, I was really grateful that somebody who had a 3-bedroom, 2-bed, I have an aunt on me, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. She actually let me have her contents list, because I just so I could show people, I took off all the identifying information. But you don't think about what's in your hallway. Like, she had to itemize what was in her hallway and where it was purchased. Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah, it's a very brutal process, and it's really hard to do after you've been through a major trauma, and there's no way around it that this is very traumatic.
One of the things that I would recommend to the fire department or the police, actually, is two of my friends lost their houses the day after the fire. And they lost them because they wouldn't let them back in. My thoughts are, what they should have done is, once the fire's gone by, okay, let the people come back for some period of time to check on their house, to see if there's bushes burning. Because what happened to my friends is that there was a very small fire. They could have put it out with a bucket of water, but because nobody was there, the house burned down.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you have any recommendations for people who aren't sure how to deal with their PTSD? Or because you're a pretty resilient guy.
Well,
you don't know this about Gary, but he's always, falling off of motorcycles, different pieces of apparatus into the roads. And every couple of years we're like, Gary. And so he's a very resilient human being to begin with. And I think that might almost be in our blood, quite frankly. But do you have any advice for people?
I think the answer is holding it in is not the answer. You got to get it out. You got to talk about it and just express yourself.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't do that. They'll hold it in. Just think about it.
Why do you think they do that? Why do you think they hold it in?
I think it's easier just to not talk. I think it's easier to just kind of deal with it, be a man about it. But
Or a
it's
woman.
not, or a woman, but it's not the answer.
Yeah.
You need to talk about it. You need to get it off your chest, let people know how you feel.
Because it's going to come for you either way. Yeah.
You got to deal with it.
Yeah. The only way through it is through it.
Well, first of all, you have to change your memory. So, after the fire, you start a new life. You build new memories. And as you build new memories, the old memories kind of fade away, and it's not so traumatic. So I think that's what happens. Like in anything else, a divorce, it just takes time to get over it. And
got to talk about it.
Got to talk about it.
Yeah. And tell your fire story. Like you told your fire story today, but we've talked about your fire story before. And I actually really liked the fact that even on social media, it was, we have again, very big family, very loving, big family. And, you weren't afraid to talk about it. And that's not the means for everybody, but I think a lot of us appreciated knowing even when it was hard, or even when, even what your small victories, or seeing the photo of you standing in front of all of it, which had burned. And
yeah, that photo, I still see that photo, and I remember what I was thinking. I try to be positive about it, because why not? And I'm looking at it as a new blessing. I'm going to have a nicer house than I had before when I get through. And it'll be exactly what my wife wanted. And, when you buy a log cabin, you didn't design it, you just bought it. There's things you would have liked to have changed. And so we've designed a house that fits us. And
what are you building your new house out of? What's the material? Because it is not wood.
Well, you can't use any wood on the outside. It's got to be concrete. It'll look like these walls here, just like wood, but it'll be concrete. And the windows will be triple glazed, glass on the outside, glass on the inside, and polycarbonate in the middle. So if a branch hits the outside glass, it won't go through the polycarbonate and keep it out of the house. If you can keep the fire out of the house, the chances are the house will stay up.
Right. What about your vents? Did they talk to you about your venting system?
Yes.
or box eaves?
You can't have no soffits. They all have to be covered, and you have to have special vents for small, so flames can't get in the attic. They now require 16,500 gallons of water if you don't have a hydrant near your house. So there's a lot of rule changes. After every event, they come up with more rules. And now one of the rules is your driveway, any private property, the driveway has to be 26 feet wide. And that rule alone made most of the property in the Santa Monica Mountains worthless, because you can't build a 26-foot wet drive. You know, it's not, can't do it. You'd have to tear the mountain down.
Right. Which you don't want to do.
No, you don't want to do so.
But they do give variance. What a variance is like there's a rule, it's a policy, and if you can get a variance, what the variance does is it says we're going to give you you don't have to follow that rule, but it doesn't mean that they take away all of the rules. So what they do for you?
Well, what they did was they call it grandfathering you in on my road. So they've been up there. They come up 3 or 4 times a year, so they can get a fire truck up there. But the new rules require a road be 26 feet wide. Now my road's about 17 feet, 18 feet. So it's, but it would be impossible to make it 26 feet. So bless it, they didn't make me do that. Basically, it's the recovery is a long process.
Yeah.
And, say it's a long process. It takes time.
It takes time. And, when people, we talk to a lot of people when they're, maybe a day or a week post disaster, and they are, understandably in a huge state of grief and loss. And I tried to say to them, your life is, what you lost in your experience, it's worth grieving over. You should respect what happened there. And eventually I have to say to them, but we can't give you back the day before. Like you have to let go of the day before it happened, because that doesn't exist anymore. And in the first year, we see a lot of people who really are so traumatized, and they're looking to try to just to get back to the day before, and that's not going to happen.
The people in the mobile home park were out for, it took a year and a half before they could start coming back.
Yeah.
And normally they have 2 deaths a year in the park, 2 to 3, old age, whatever. Year after the fire, we lost 10 people.
Wow.
2 or 3 of them were suicide.
Oh no.
We just couldn't deal with it. And, so
that's pretty common in disasters, is some people they just look at the totality of it and they think, how am I ever going to get through this? And one of our jobs with after the fire is for them to know that you don't have to get through it alone. Like we actually have a huge group of fire survivors who will talk to you, about how to get through. It's one of the reasons why we do the podcast, that the only real mistake that you can make is thinking that you have to do this alone, because you don't have to do it alone. And no matter who you are, what your position is, if you are a person who is not a high wealth individual, or if you're non-English speaking, or if you're a high wealth individual, you're still our constituent, and we will still find somebody or many people who are happy to talk to you, because you're in a club now. And to borrow your language, it's a shit club, we know, but it's full of the most amazing people. And if you join the club, you are actually going to meet the best people along the way. And go ahead.
One of my neighbors over here, the day after the day after the fire, they had a newscaster, and this guy was complaining about the fire. In fact, they didn't come up there. I mean, they let it burn. Of course, they couldn't put it out. They went as far as the clubhouse and didn't go any further. So he was bitching about that on the news. Well, the fire department saw that on TV. So next day they come down, they go to his house, and they give him $2,500 worth of gift cards.
Oh,
like you say, people want to help out.
Yeah.
So the guy, gets the gift cards, thanks him, and says, "Well, good. Now what I can do is I can take this money, go buy myself a nice gun, go to a nice motel, and shoot myself." And of course, he was joking, and they all laughed. Well, the next day, social services showed up. Fire department turned them in.
Should have.
And they go, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Because it happens.
it happens. People do that kind of stuff.
They do. They do. And it's so sad. We had that happen after our fires up in Fountain Grove. There was a gentleman, I mean, it was on the news, but I'm not going to say his name or his occupation, but he went up to his home site and he committed suicide. And I would still think about like his family or his wife, like that would be such a compounded tragedy. And that if people sort of normalize the fact that mental health is really important, you do have to take care of yourself. You do have to have strategies, and those strategies can be faith, they can be friends, they can be family, it can be a myriad of things, and no one thing works for everyone. But I would strongly encourage anyone who is just that sort of despondent after a disaster to call the helplines. That's why they exist, and to know that can and does pass. You know, you can get through it.
Thank you for listening to our chat with Woolsey Fire survivor Gary Jones. We'll be right back with this episode after a word from our sponsor. This podcast is sponsored by Fire Safe Signs. In a disaster, seconds matter. Fire Safe Signs give first responders critical information like, can a fire truck make it down the driveway? What water sources are available? Fire Safe Signs help property owners provide crucial information to first responders, and they're made in the USA. Getting this information in seconds helps save lives. Together, we make our community safe. Visit us today at firesafesigns.com. Welcome back to the How to Disaster podcast, Recover, Rebuild, and Reimagine, and our conversation with Jennifer Gray Thompson and Woolsey Fire survivor Gary Jones.
You know, you're the only podcast that I've done so far with anybody from the Woolsey Fire, and it was good. I love that you have this relationship with the people at Seminole Springs, and many thanks for Fannie Mae was very active in their recovery, and the Malibu Foundation as well, very helpful. Their community was, they really advocated well for themselves, and none of it goes smoothly, for the record. Do not expect that, but it is possible. As you return to your land, I mean, you never left your land, to be clear, and you have a very strong relationship with your land, and you were the first person to ever show me that fire can also be good, which
Can be beautiful.
it can be beautiful, because
It brings change.
It brings change. So what are your sort of closing thoughts around that? Because it really did help me, and I had already been working in this space for 13, 14 months, by 15 months by the time we took a fire walk. And then Gary showed me Native American dance circles and tools and how people had lived, and it had only been revealed by the fire.
You go back there now, you can't see it. It's covered in brush. So
as well it should be.
Yeah, keep people away from it.
Yeah.
But no, I think there's a lot of beauty in what can come out of a fire, and it just takes time. You know, you get all those nutrients in the soil from the burned trees and things like that, and in a couple of years, three more years, things will be back to quote normal. You know, the plants will be talking to each other again, and a lot of the brush. One of the plants that we burned out of here was a plant called Blacklit Sage, and one of my favorite plants that I get honey from. It's almost a pure honey. I mean, pure white honey.
Some people make hooch out of that, but I don't know anybody that might be true about.
And so, anyways, all that's gone now. And what came back in its place is a plant called morning glory. And the problem with morning glory is it's a vine, and it completely covers the mountain and slows down, shuts the light off from the other plants that are seeds that are below it. So it's a problem. It's also toxic to horses.
Oh. So
that was one of the things Edison compensated for, was that it destroyed part of my land with that plant. Now that's something Cal, California Fair Plan wouldn't do. They wouldn't
Right.
pay for that.
So did you have to have it removed, or what did you
You
do?
have to tear it out.
Yeah.
You have to dig it out. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's it can grow
Invasive.
You can't walk through it. You'll trip. You have to walk on top of it.
So you were saying that the things that come from the fire that are not bad things are
No.
and this is not a religious podcast, and Gary, I'm not religious, and Gary knows that, but I respect the fact that he is, and I know that has been a big source of comfort for him. And so can you just talk about that too, that was one of your strategies for healing?
Yeah. I think I think people with the faith system do better in times like this because they know they're not in charge and have never been in charge. And so they just let it go. And it's easier for people with a belief system, I think, to handle stuff like this. Same with being an alcoholic. They talk about a higher power. Once you give it up to somebody else or to a spiritual thing, then you relieve yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's actually one of the things I've been thinking a lot about this year is, and because somebody said it to me, not because I came up with it on my own, because it was so fearful to watch the earth sort of rebel in a way that you had no control over it, and it still feels like a fire monster when I see it, like it and because it makes its own weather, and it's terrifying, but it's also a reminder of that we are not in charge of the earth. And the sea will rise as the sea wants to rise, and we can and all of the ways we've been trying to control the earth are all the things that are getting us into trouble with climate change. Some of that may be naturally occurring, but a lot of it is something that we can mitigate or help and have a better and bigger respect for the earth.
There's nothing wrong with being conscious of the environment and try to cut back on pollution, things like that. But the only thing you can do is react. It's hard to. It's about all you can do is react. It's hard to plan ahead. If the fire comes, deal with it. You like to think you can solve problems by preventing them, by acting in advance. And in a tragedy like this, the only thing you do is react at the time.
Now, there are things we can do to make the wildlands safer.
You can do all kinds of things to make it.
You can't prevent it, but you can certainly. That's why I like to say that I'm in the business of mitigating pain. That's what I do. So, with all of our before the fire programs, they're about mitigating the effects of, the chances of having a devastating mega fire. It's not about preventing wildfire. Not at all.
But how to deal with it.
But how to deal with it, and then help people navigate, help communities navigate, bring best practices, which is what the podcast is about, and new ideas, and none of them are prescriptions. They're all adaptable systems. So, well,
a lot of people, the couple that killed themselves, they didn't have insurance, and the house was paid off, and it's a way to save some money. And they were on a fixed income, and then they lose everything, and shit, what's there to live for? So,
that's so sad.
Yeah, and they dealt with it differently. Edison would have bought them a new house.
Yeah, but they don't know at the time, though. All they see is the despair. That's why you got to give yourself a hot minute if you're in despair post-disaster.
So what California Fair Plan does? So you got to have insurance.
You do,
and even though it costs, it just doesn't make sense to. My neighbor up on top, he was a renter, and he was paying $7,000 a month rent, and he had no insurance. Now, renter's insurance is cheap.
It's so cheap, and it's quick.
And I mean, what I'm thinking, man, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm not even sure that renter's insurance was that common before, but I hope that if you don't have insurance, please take care of that today.
Yeah.
We see that a lot in our fires as well. The first night of our fires, I met an entire family who were sheltering, who had lost their home, and it was paid off, so they didn't pay their insurance anymore.
Yeah.
And they were absolutely devastated. And FEMA will not make you whole.
Yeah.
You know, they may offer you some assistance, but you will never be able to get home again. And we really, really want you to get home again. So even if it's just the bare minimum of insurance, you still need insurance. You've got to have it. So,
and the more the better, you know.
Always the more the better. It's true. So is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish that I had asked, or anything that you would want people to know as they remember your story?
Probably the message to people, I would say, when the call for evacuation comes, take it serious.
Yeah.
Get out. And you know, if I'd have done that the day before, I would have got my dogs out because I would have had time. You know, when the fire's coming at you, you don't have any time.
Don't have time. You don't have time.
You know, and you like to think you take the right stuff, but you know, what do you take? What's important?
Yeah. And that's actually a really common regret, actually, that I hear from people, that they're okay with losing their couch. Yeah, they're okay with if their stuff is gone, their stuff is gone. But their animals is what hurts.
And precious things.
Yeah. Books. I hear you. I do. I want to thank you so much for spending such a wonderful day with me, because even though we're related, he doesn't have to. And it's been in telling me your story, and this has been I think this has been my third time since the fires, and I will come again, and I'm very much looking forward to doing a podcast again when you are rebuilt, because you know,
I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'll certainly show you what I've done.
I'll be very excited about that, and I'll ride in an ATV again, and I'm hoping that you get one with a seatbelt next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seatbelts in it.
Yep. Okay. Well, this has been the How to Disaster podcast, where we help you recover, rebuild, and reimagine. And thank you so much for joining us, Gary Jones, as Woolsey Fire survivor. We do not say victim. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, How to Disaster. For more information, please visit our website at afterthefireusa.org. And if you liked this video, please hit subscribe.
Fannie Mae, the largest provider of mortgage finance in the U.S., owns 1 out of every 4 loans in the country. You can find out if Fannie Mae owns your mortgage at knowyouroptions.com by using our loan lookup tool. This last year has been quite difficult, and making your mortgage payments could be too. There are options for those available that may have experienced a natural disaster, such as wildfire or the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the options available is a forbearance plan, where homeowners are given a period of reduced or suspended payments to manage temporary hardship of financial standing. For this caused by natural disaster or COVID-19 pandemic, you could be eligible for a 6-month extension with a possibility of another 6 months after that. During the forbearance plan, the homeowner is not charged late fees. If you received additional living expense assistance after your disaster, and those funds have run out, you still may be eligible to apply for a forbearance plan. When your forbearance plan ends, your lending or servicer will contact you to see if you need assistance or are ready to resume making your normal scheduled mortgage payments. If you don't hear from them, you should proactively reach out. If you are unable to repay the balance in its entirety, you may arrange a repayment plan, or if eligible, qualify for other programs such as a payment deferral or flex modification. A payment deferral allows you to bring your mortgage current. This option keeps your monthly mortgage payment the same as it was before your hardship, and the total deferred amount will be due on the last scheduled payment of the loan. Should you sell or refinance, the deferred balance is included in the remaining amount due. Flex modification is Fannie Mae's standard modification. Provides 20% principal and interest payment reduction on your mortgage, Once the modification is complete, the loan's term is extended to 40 years. Depending on the circumstances, the modification may result in a reduction of interest rate and/or principal forbearance. What is a principal forbearance, by the way? And that's when a portion of the unpaid principal balance, basically the remaining loan amount, is put into an interest-free balance secured by the loan as part of the flex modification. It can be modified by the maturity date or with an early payoff. More information is available at knowyouroptions.com. When ready to request mortgage assistance, reach out to your mortgage company. This is the company you send your payments to each month, and you'll find that phone number on your mortgage statement. Additional relief assistance is available through our disaster response network. Here, impacted homeowners can work with HUD-approved housing counselors to get help requesting financial relief through FEMA, insurance claims, and more. Homeowners can visit knowyouroptions.com/relief for more information or call 877-833-1746. Once again, 877-833-1746 or knowyouroptions.com.